guys, welcome back to the Establish the Pass podcast presented by ClutchPoints. I'm your host, Blake Lovell. With me, as always, my co-host, Dillon Reagan, back here to make our picks for Week 10 in the NFL. We didn't have our picks episode last week, Dillon, because you were out gallivanting around all over the place, but we're back here, and we did actually make our picks. We just did them in written form at ClutchPoints versus the audio portion. Dillon had a big week on the picks, but it's a good thing we didn't do those in audio form. That way we can't tell you that I missed several last week. But hoping, Dillon, for us to get back on track this week.
Hoping so. I know at least the week before, we didn't do any locks for Week 9, but Week 8, my Niners over the Rams, it all worked out just as we talked about, as I planned. I was finally going to get one thing good happen for me, and at least I got one of the locks right. But yeah, you still had a solid week, I think, on the picks. I just the games we differed on, I had a little bit of a comeback on you. You were dominating early in the season. I think we're almost even. I think you're still ahead by a bit. I'll have to after this episode add those up. But yeah, it should be another interesting week. I think there were some really fun games last week. I'm trying to tell myself that we're going to have some really exciting games this week. I think Vikings Bills. We're going to start off with that one. If Josh Allen plays, has a chance to be one of the best ones of the week, but kind of, even when you want to be excited about, it'd be like, all right, there's like 5-6 really good teams right now. Everyone else is kind of in the middle. And then we got the injury concerns with Josh Allen, which has not been fun for Bills fans, obviously, but for anyone that just enjoys good football, because the Bills are one of the most consistent teams where even if they don't win, they're at least playing competitive, fun football.
So on the picks front, what you're saying is I'm the Raiders of our picks this year, where I get a big lead and then, anyways, sorry, that was too easy. We'll get to the Raiders here in a bit. But starting with our games of the week, it does not involve the Las Vegas Raiders. Instead, you just said that the Vikings are at the Bills. The Bills are 4-point favorites. Throw that spread out if Josh Allen doesn't play, because I think there will be that one will be taken off the board and probably changed dramatically if he is not available. Of course, Dylan, that's the story of this game. I keep telling you, the Vikings are 7-1. It's still, every time I look at it, I'm just like, oh yeah. It's not like you're forgetting the Vikings are 7-1, but it's just sort of like a very quiet 7-1 somehow. Not quiet for fans of the team, of course, but here they are. And I mean, again, let's say Allen doesn't play, or I think you have to assume at this point he's not going to be 100%, even if he does play. This sets up to be a pretty good spot, I think, for the Vikings in what is a difficult matchup, just given what the Bills can do on defense. And I'm still going to pick the Bills to win the game, but if Allen doesn't play, it's all bets are off in terms of how this game plays out.
Yeah, that's why the spread's obviously so conservative right now. You just don't know at this point. It does sound like if he does miss time, it's only going to be a week, which is encouraging. I mean, he did, after the injury happened, throw that 70-yard bomb that hit Gabe Davis in the chest and fell to the ground against the Jets. Yeah, Vikings fans shouldn't be complaining, or they're not going to be making any apologies, because they've had so many things go against them over the last few years, really the whole Kirk Cousins era. Now everything's breaking their way finally to be a 7-1 team, despite a DVOA ranking, I think, at like 18th in the league. They're behind teams like Atlanta and Denver in total DVOA, Jacksonville. Yet they're 7-1. Aaron Schatz from Football Outsiders tweeted out that only two teams in NFL, or at least in the DVOA era, since I think they've retroactively gone back to like the late 80s, early 90s, only two teams have started 7-1 with a DVOA under 5%. It was the 2000 Vikings, who I believe made the NFC title game before getting absolutely blasted by the Giants, and then now this current Vikings iteration. I think they're still a solid team. They're obviously cruising to a division title here. But even if Josh Allen doesn't play, I think at home with Buffalo's defense, there's a chance that they cause a number of problems for the Vikings offense. They have not been consistent. They've barely beat some pretty bad teams or mediocre teams over the course of the year. And I think Buffalo still has enough ingenuity with their offense to get some things going. Maybe they overall find some different techniques and different things that could help them when Allen is fully healthy, or at least more healthy than he is at this moment. So, yeah, it should have been the easy game of the week with Allen playing with an easy Bills pick. Maybe not with whatever the spread would have been if that was the case, but still I think qualifies. We have two of the top records in the NFL, and Minnesota Vikings team that their fans should not be making any apologies to anyone with some of the things and some of the bad luck they've had over the years. And once again, now with this possible matchup against Josh Allen, who And his kind of first breakout game, if I'm not mistaken, was against the Vikings too. So maybe, when they were favored by like almost 20 points, and Josh Allen ran all over them his rookie season. Maybe this is a little bit of revenge time for Minnesota.
All right, our second game of the week, probably an unusual one from a point spread standpoint. And I looked at this, I was like, wow, this seems high. The Chargers are at the 49ers, so an in-state battle there in California, with the 49ers as 7-point favorites in this game. We're not to our betting locks here yet, but I just tend to think that the Chargers as a betting lock to cover that 7 is one that I would feel pretty confident about. But it is an interesting matchup. You've had two teams that have obviously been banged up a little bit at times this season, and maybe has kind of held them back from being perhaps what we thought they would be to this point. But still, a high upside for both. I don't think there's any doubt about that when they're both healthy. But this is kind of an interesting one to me because I really thought about this, and no, not just because I'm still the wild man who picked the Chargers to make the Super Bowl and have backtracked on that one. But quite honestly, I'm not backtracked on that one as much as I backtracked on the team I picked to win the Super Bowl. We'll get to them in a minute. But I think, I don't know, I think the Chargers have a shot here. I just, that number feels pretty high to me, but I'm still going to pick the Niners just because I think that when you consider all the weapons that they have on offense now, coming off a week off, getting Christian McCaffrey obviously a lot more acclimated to what they want to do, I just think it probably sets up pretty well for the Niners, even though I don't see this being a touchdown type game to me.
Yeah, Herbert's going to have to play really well against a pass rush that's going to be coming for him the whole game. I do have concerns still about the Chargers' offensive line with all the injuries they've had. I think that's one big difference between these two teams going into this game. Is just the Niners are getting healthier. The Chargers are still so banged up. I do think matchup-wise, it favors San Francisco in terms of when they have the ball. The Chargers have not solved their run defense from last year. Maybe they're slightly better DVOA-wise, but they're still towards the bottom of the league. And we know what Kyle Shanahan does, what he's been able to do in the early going here with as they get McCaffrey acclimated. They had to win off against the Rams, and I think with a week off, more time to learn the offense, more time to get comfortable, I think it's only going to help him in this matchup. I do worry that this could be one of those games where Jimmy G throws the ball like 15 times and they just run all over the Chargers. So if it's going to be as close as I think it could be close, but it's going to have to be Herbert, buying time, making those rushers miss, finding guys downfield and making it kind of work as he did last week in Atlanta. And they still easily could have lost that game, obviously. So Chargers are kind of an inconsistent team, and obviously the Niners have been, but I think the Niners are a team at this point where this is maybe where we start to see them figuring things out, building, stacking these games and stacking some wins rather than, losing to some of the teams they should have easily beat early in the season. That they can't do anything about that now with their 4-4 record, but it should be a fun game. And I think still two playoff teams here, which you look at the rest of the slate, we have a lot of good teams on buys. Once again, we have a lot of matchups between teams that probably aren't going to make the playoffs. So this one, maybe when you stack it against all our games of the week over the season and over the years, maybe one that seems more like a really good game that's not a game of the week. But I think in week 10, it qualifies.
Yeah, I think it does for this week for sure. All right, on to our betting locks. And it's hard to believe there's no New York teams represented in our betting locks or upsets, which has kind of been a theme this season with the Giants and the Jets. But, of course, the Jets on a bye, the Giants in a lackluster matchup, perhaps, even though we didn't decide to go that route for them as a lock. But for me, I decided to head down to Miami for this one. The Browns were at the Dolphins. The Dolphins, 3.5-point favorites at home. And, I think it's easy to forget when teams go on a bye. You're like, oh, yeah, I forgot the Browns just completely decimated the Bengals before they went on their bye. But still, I think going on the road here, Deshaun Watson return is looming next week. I think, I think there can be some distractions surrounding that, but this is a team that looked pretty good on the defensive side of the ball against the Bengals, but I think the difference is they go on the road playing a Dolphins team that has just been very good offensively, as we know, and when you kind of see what they're doing now, adding Jeff Wilson to the mix, you've got, two running backs that can do a lot for them in addition to the obvious Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle production. I just think if you're picking the Dolphins to win this game, which I am, my guess is they can win this by at least 4. So I'll go with the Dolphins here at home against the Browns.
Yeah, also at home, like you mentioned, I think, and they get that or to a day game once again, where they get their home field advantage with their how the stadium's been built to put the other team right in the sunshine throughout the game while they're in the shade with the way the top of the stadium's constructed. So they got that back on their side, but also just the offense. It's been so good. They're finding guys wide open all over the field. The pass defense for the overall for this season for the Browns has been pretty bad. Yes, they dominated the Bengals like you mentioned, but they've had the Bengals number for years. I don't think they've lost since Joe Burrow got drafted to Cincinnati yet. Obviously, a different case here. The Browns, I do still think they are better than their record, but I agree though with you on this. I would make this also kind of like a secondary lock. I really don't think Cleveland's defense is going to be able to get the same kind of pressure on Miami. They run the ball too well. I think Mike McDaniel is going to be ready for some of the things that he knows the Browns are going to try to do. They've just been a step ahead. Their speed is it's hard to match. And we've seen it at times this Cleveland secondary get exposed. And I just worry, Jamar Chase obviously wasn't playing in that game on Monday night. So it's just a different animal that they're going to be facing in this one. I think Miami, I feel pretty comfortable about them. I just think even though their defense also hasn't been great, Miami's, but the one thing is they're pretty good against the run. Their second worst defense in DVOA against the pass, seventh best in run defense DVOA. Just not a great matchup for what Cleveland's offense is constructed to do at this point. So all those things factored in. Little home cooking. I think it's time for Miami to have a game where they separate a bit more than they did against the Bears. And obviously the Bears, and we'll get to them soon, they've discovered something. So it's not, we can't just completely crap on the Dolphins defense for what happened on Sunday. There were some things that a lot of defenses would have struggled with.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. So yeah, I like the Dolphins against the Browns here. And of course, we'll have perhaps a different conversation about the Browns heading into next week. All right, your betting lock. We go to Kansas City. The Jags on the road at Arrowhead there. The Chiefs are 9.5-point favorites in this game. Obviously, I'm picking the Chiefs here, and I think this is one to consider because the Jags have turned the ball over too, and I think playing this Chiefs team that I think we just know. They're gonna be able to put up points here. I think the Titans defense a little bit better than the Jags defense in terms of what the Titans were able to do against the Chiefs in that game on Sunday night. But I think this is it just feels like a tough task here for a Jags team that's just been pretty inconsistent. And I know they're coming off of a needed win, but this is a different scenario going to Kansas City.
Yeah, the Jags have one of the worst pass defenses in DVOA in the league. I looked at that, and I know what Kansas City's done when they have the ball, and it's like, man, that's going to be tough. I had been trying to shy away because these are the kind of games that got me in trouble. These spreads around 8 or 9 points, but they were with teams like Green Bay and Tampa Bay, not Kansas City usually. So I'm hoping at this point I put my eggs in a better basket with what the Chiefs have looked like the last few weeks. Yeah, I still think the Jags, they're probably not going to make I think their playoff hopes are pretty dang low at 3-6 in an AFC that's absolutely stacked. Things had broken their way a bit better early in the year. They'd probably be right there in the middle of the mix. I think they're more like a 4-5 team, or maybe even 5-4, honestly, with the talent that they have. I just think the Chiefs are that good. I know that they struggled at times against Tennessee's defense, but Tennessee's defense has been a wrecking machine for a lot of this season. There's a reason that the Titans are, and we keep complimenting Mike Vrabel as a coach for the things that they've been able to do. They have one of they're a top 10 defense at this point. And the Jags do not have that, so it's going to be a little easier. Also, the home cooking for Kansas City, I think that should help in this one. So I'll go with the Chiefs, but like I said, I'm kind of going the two here. I'm going Dolphins also a lock, Kansas City a lock. I'd love to see these teams play in the playoffs, Dolphins and Chiefs. I'm hoping we get something along those lines eventually, but yeah, should be a fun one.
All right, to our upsets of the week. Like I said, no Giants or Jets representing this either. Mine is a very uninspired pick here because I don't love either of these teams. I'm just going to tell you straight up here. But I think what I told you, Dylan, is I don't have another upset on the board, period. So this one by default has to be my upset of the week. But again, it's very uninspiring. And I think this entire schedule is kind of uninspiring when you look at this slate in particular. This is one of those slates that probably looked a lot better about 2 months ago.
Oh, yeah.
But now it's just like, some of these games are not what you maybe thought they'd be. The Saints are 2.5-point favorites on the road, taking on the Steelers. And again, you talk about a game a decade ago that's very high profile. This season, not very high profile in terms of where these two teams are at. I'm just going to take a swing here at the Steelers and pick them to win at home against the Saints, who, I mean, let's call it what it is with the Saints. They've got some talent, but they're just not, another one of those teams that's been a little bit all over the place at times, and you don't really know what to expect. So I think them going on the road here, I don't know. I just don't love the setup, even though they have been in some close games. But again, I don't know. Like I said, these are two teams that, Dylan, if you can figure these two out the rest of the way, good luck. I just don't have a great feel for it. But again, by default, it's my upset of the week.
Yeah, coming off the bye, and I think being at home are two big things for Pittsburgh, at least with the defense in particular. They've looked awful for a lot of the season, but to your point, New Orleans has not looked great either. And I think at times with the Saints, like you said, you see some of the potential, but the offensive line is just bad. And I know Pittsburgh's banged up front on defense, but I still think that has a chance to kind of muck things up. I think this is going to be a pretty low-scoring game, potentially. I think Pittsburgh gets pretty conservative. Not that they've done much on offense either. So I picked the Steelers too. Mostly, I just kind of think this is one of those games where, maybe sometimes we make too much of home field advantage. But I really do feel that if this game was in New Orleans, I'd probably flip the pick. But since it's in Pittsburgh, since it's on grass, since it's going to be cold, I'll go with the Steelers to find a way to get a win here. But it's two teams, like you said, on a schedule. Not that we ever, going into the season, we probably would have put Pittsburgh last in this division. And I wasn't trying to take too much away from them. I didn't think they'd be at 2-6, especially after the way the defense looked in week one, and obviously losing TJ Watt. Such a huge part of what's happened there on that side, but we knew the offense was going to be a work in progress, and that's basically if we've gotten anything right from our preseason prognosticating, I think it's that Pittsburgh's offense was going to struggle, and sure enough, it has. Yeah. But maybe they'll put up enough points. Boswell's a good kicker in these kind of conditions. Maybe that the special teams will play a role in them winning as well. New Orleans is, I think, in the bottom, 28th in special teams DVOA. They have struggled there, and not a good thing to have happen at Heinz Field or whatever it's called now.
Yeah, it's just this is a game on the schedule.
This is a game.
This is a game that will be played in Pittsburgh. All right, this next one will be played too, but it'll be played in Tampa. The Seahawks at the Bucks. The Bucks are 3-point favorites.
I think it's in Germany, sir.
Oh, you're right. My goodness, that's the Germany game. Yeah. I just forgot about that. Okay, so this is going to be, I think, 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 a.m., something like that.
6:30 for me.
Yeah, okay. It's going to be on your 9:30 Eastern, I think, 8:30 Central, 6:30 Pacific. Covering all the bases there. Mountain Time, it's going to be 7:30. But I forgot this is the Germany game, and that makes this one certainly a bit more interesting. I think I got thrown off. We had the weeks there, and we played several in a row, and now we had the week off, and now it's back there. Anyways, you got a team in the Bucks, my Super Bowl pick, that has just not done well. They're coming off a win, but let's be honest. Like, for Tom Brady, it was a win. He felt better. The guy was, could take a little exhale a bit, but they didn't look great in that game against the Rams. And meanwhile, the Seahawks have certainly been one of the biggest surprises of the NFL this season, and they've looked really good. Dylan, I'm going to hold on to my pick here. I'm going to pick the Bucks. Maybe all it's going to take is going overseas for the Bucks to turn their season around. I think it's going to be much harder than that, but I'll say they find a way to win this game, but there's no confidence whatsoever. And obviously, since it's in our upsets of the week, you are going to go in the opposite direction.
Yeah. The thing is with Tampa, it was not, as you meant, like, that game was not a game that anyone deserved to win between them and the Rams. It was just a rock fight with not a lot happening. It was just who's going to find a way at the end of the game, and the Rams defense is a little soft. Tampa took advantage and got the points at the end. Their defense has been good, but man, it's a different team than Seattle than anyone anticipated outside of that building and in that fan base. I think at this point they are legit. They're not just a fun team, and the thing that's really made me come around to them isn't even the offense. We knew the offense was, after the first few weeks, I actually trusted that was going to be consistently good. They only had one bad performance early in the year against San Francisco when they're just getting things going. It's the defense's turnaround. The last 3 weeks, they've been incredible. Their DVOA has skyrocketed from like 20-something to 12th. Clint Hurt, their new defense coordinator this year. They brought in Sean Desai, who was the Bears defense coordinator before the new regime came in. He's an assistant on that staff. They did a great job of evaluating what they're doing and not just sticking. It's something we've heard Rams players talk about. A lot of players of different teams that are struggling this year talk about how frustrated they are with just trying the same thing and that not working over and over again. You have to be a week-to-week team. It's what has made a lot of teams successful. It's a hallmark of a lot of Belichick Super Bowl runs have been how they're able to morph that team based on the matchups. And I think we're starting to see Seattle's defense just get the best out of the people they have. I just think they're a more complete team at this point, and I'm excited to see what this defense does. Obviously, the game being in Germany, I think in Munich, does throw off some of the, it's just you get a little wackiness when you're out of that many time zones and 6:30, the whole body clock thing for the Seattle players compared to Tampa Bay having 9:30. But I just think Seattle's a better team at this point. So, figured, well, I'm going to need at least one or two upsets here. Going to go with Seattle. I picked them last week. In a lot of matchups. I'm just going to probably stick with them because they have good specialty. They're, not that many teams this year are in the top 10 in DVOA in all three phases. They're just outside of it with that 12th ranked defense, but they're right. The only other team that is Buffalo and Dallas off the top of just looking at this real quick. Some teams have offense and defense. Special teams aren't so great, but Seattle's just got all the phases clicking. They're just as good as fifth in overall DVOA, and they're expected to finish seventh. They're right there. I do think Tampa's still better than their 4-5 record because that defense had another great game against the Rams. A lot of teams have look good against the Rams, to be fair. But I just think Seattle's a better team, and I trust where they're going a little more at this point.
Yeah, we'll see. My confidence in either Super Bowl selection, I really went on a limb this year, and it's not looking great so far. All right, to our quick picks. We'll roll through these quickly. We start with the Thursday night game, and because we're going to roll through quickly, don't get me started, Dylan, on the Kyle Pitts fantasy football discussion. Falcons are 3-point favorites on the road in Carolina against the Panthers. I'm going to go Falcons here. I just, coming off that wild game these two teams played literally 2 weeks ago, I don't think it'll be as crazy as that one was with the DJ Moore touchdown and penalty and just so many crazy things felt like happened in that game. I think this will be a little bit more calm in terms of how it plays out, but getting Cordero Patterson back last week, they clearly used him a lot. I think that'll be the same thing here. Falcons are going to run the ball, and I think they find a way to win this one.
Yeah, I think Carolina, they had that. They could have, probably should have won that game, like you mentioned, against Atlanta before. They also had that great performance against Tampa Bay. I think they came back to earth a little bit in Cincinnati last week.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
And they're still expected to be they are last in overall DVOA. They're expected to stay there. I just think they're not as good of a team as what Atlanta's proven to be. Atlanta's not great, but their offense has been pretty consistently solid, even with, as we've talked about before the episode, even without Kyle Pitts being a big part of it. They've found a way to score points. They are running the ball well. Like you mentioned with Patterson back, now you got a 1-2 punch. Those guys are going to be fresh at all times. I know, drafting Derek Brown back in, I forget if it was 2020, what year it was, has really been a huge part of Carolina's defensive line resurgence, not being so, at least on the run defense side. They obviously Burns and the pass rush, it was cooking for a while, but adding him has helped that run defense, but I still don't think they have enough. They still haven't looked consistently good enough on defense, even if Atlanta's defense is really bad. I don't know if Carolina has enough weapons and release a scheme yet to take advantage of that. I know in the second half Baker put some points up, but Cincinnati was basically sitting back. So I'll go with Atlanta. I think they're just a better team, even if the last game barely they won, but it easily could have and probably should have gone Carolina's way.
Well, a team whose tight end is putting up fantasy points lately. The Lions at the Bears. The Bears, 3-point favorites here in this one, and we're talking about the Bears here, not the Lions, because they traded away their tight end, the Minnesota Vikings. The Bears, Justin Fields show, Cole Kmet, it's all coming together, Dylan. Everything for the Bears right now. Fields has been the QB1 in fantasy for the past 4 weeks or something like that. He's got great matchups here moving forward. This guy is just doing things left and right that is kind of giving this Bears team the boost that it needed. And I'm gonna keep rolling with it here. I'm gonna go with the Bears. I told you I almost made this my lock of the week, but I decided not to because I didn't want to hurt Bears fans by doing that because we all know the Lions would probably win that game at that point. I know the Lions are coming off the win against the Packers, but I'll be honest, I think that was more about the Packers than the Lions. I think the Bears and Justin Fields and Dave Montgomery and Khalil Herbert, and I think they'll be able to put up some points here against this Lions team.
Yeah, I was going to look it up, the over-under in this game, because I do feel like there's a chance it's going to go over. It's probably set pretty high. This Bears defense, as we've seen, isn't the defense of old, especially after trading away Roquan and Robert Quinn. The over-under is 48.5. I would probably go over. Maybe if this game was in Detroit for sure. In Chicago, maybe you get a little bit of a messy weather game. We'll find out on what the forecast is. But I'm picking the Bears too. It's just the Lions. Yes, they beat the Packers, but the Packers have been so just hard to watch. Their offense is all over the place. They still drove down the field, and really, if they don't turn the ball over in the red zone and just even settle for field goals and get conservative or just run the ball a little more, as they have talked about doing, maybe they end up winning that game against the Lions. I just think the Bears, I have a lot of questions about the defense, but I'm riding the Justin Fields train, similar to what the Seahawks have done with their defense in terms of being like, all right, this is not working. What do we need to fix? The Bears have unleashed Justin Fields. They're finally playing to his strengths. They're finally letting him utilize his athleticism. They're not so worried about him taking those hits down the field. He's already taken enough hits in the backfield with their offense before. Might as well have him gain yards before he takes those hits. Some of the runs that he had against the Dolphins were just incredible. And I just think that even though they lose that game, they had a PI that should have been called, really obvious one that would have given them a chance to at least tie the game, potentially win there at the end against a really good Dolphins team. I just really like where the Bears are going. And I think the Lions, while they had that big win, still not convinced. And watch, as we say this all, the Lions will probably win this game. But no, it's one of the bigger storylines I think for this year and moving forward is, there was a point early in this year where people were like, this, it's a new scheme and there's a lot of questions. They got new coaching staff. They didn't draft Justin Fields, all this stuff about questions about what the Bears might do. And then suddenly it's in 3 weeks, everyone's like, this is the next great quarterback. So, we'll see how long this goes. I hope for Justin's sake he stays healthy. I know they still need some more weapons for him. Still don't have the best offensive line, but man, it's been fun so far. And I don't think the Lions defense is going to be the one that's going to slow them down.
Yeah, it's just wild to think what they look like the first 4 weeks of the season and what they look like the last 4 weeks. It's just such a huge difference. So there you go. We're both on the Bears there. Broncos and the Titans. Speaking of offenses that are perhaps not thrilling, you could have two of them here, depending on how the Titans decide to play offense if Ryan Tannehill doesn't play, because we know they're not going to throw the ball a lot. Meanwhile, the Broncos coming off a bye. By the way, the Titans are 2.5-point favorites at home in this one. Broncos coming off the bye. Heard a lot of talk, Dylan, about how this is going to just reinvigorate this Broncos team. I'm not buying it. I've seen what I've seen this season, and again, unless they took a trip somewhere just to find some sort of consistency or on offensive play calling or anything, I haven't seen it. I don't think the chemistry's there with this team. I know there's some things they can exploit with this Titans defense, maybe in the secondary, but I just don't have a lot of trust in this Broncos team. And even for the Titans, if they're even without Ryan Tannehill here, Malik Willis may throw 10 passes at most. I still think they find a way to beat the Broncos.
Yeah, it's not the best matchup for Denver. I know they can stack the box, but they're 20. Even though Denver's defense has been fantastic, again, they're the only reason they're sticking in these games and have won a few and still have a hope if they can have their offense become mediocre that they can do something. I've talked a lot about how frustrating it has to be for that defense. We've seen the players themselves, but they've been dominant. However, their dominance mostly is through the air. They're 25th in run defense DVOA. That is not what you want to have against Tennessee, and especially even if Willis plays and what he can do running the ball himself, in addition to the running backs and what Derrick Henry, the resurgence we've talked about over the course of this season. On the flip side, Tennessee's defense not perfect, but they stuff the run. Their pass defense has been fine. Like you mentioned, there might be some things they can exploit, but I just don't see there's nothing to tell us so far that Denver is going to be able to do that with Russell back there or with anyone back there. So I'm picking the Titans. Almost thought of this as a lock just because of the low spread. I was like, if they're going to win, they're going to probably win by a field goal. Shied away from it just in case that, maybe Malik makes some rookie mistakes. He did at times in that Chiefs game just not look quite ready. I think the potential is definitely there. You see the flashes, but then there's other parts where he's just not seeing the field well. But I do think they're going to have a pretty conservative game plan. Unlike the last game that we just mentioned, this one's over under 38. I would probably take the under.
Yeah, I know.
I see this being just run like Tennessee dominating time of possession. I see some 3-and-outs for the Broncos. I don't know. I just think the Titans are a better team, so I'm going to pick them. And the spread seems a little bit. I don't know. Maybe some of the people betting on these games still have some faith in what Denver can do, and I do think they do have a really good defense, and it's just like
first to three.
They could be so good.
It's first to three.
First
to three's winning this one. Like whoever scores 3 points, game over. Like this is a 3-2 game. So this is a 3-2 game. I think if Ryan Tannehill doesn't play, and even if he does play, it may be 3-2. So that's my advice on this one. All right, Texans at the Giants. Here's another one that I think is sneaky bad game, maybe. The Texans are on the road. Giants are 5-point favorites in this one. The Texans, as we said, I mean, they're a team that we know is still a long way away from where they want to be. Giants coming off a bye, rested up here. I just think they take care of business. I don't again, this was a hard game, like from a spread standpoint to figure out, because I do think the Texans could, make this one. I don't know what the right verbiage is. Ugly, like just maybe try to find a way to do some things defensively. But I'm not picking against the Giants here.
No, the Giants, they did lose in Seattle. That's a tough place to play, and we talked about the defense for the Seattle has really turned it around. That is not the case with this Houston team that is ranking towards the bottom in both offensive defensive DVOA. They've been especially bad on defense against the run, the worst run defense in the league. That is not a good formula when you're playing this Giants team that. Similar to Minnesota, where you're like, all right, how good are they really in terms of their record and all their advanced stats, and just watching the games, they've barely beaten some bad teams, they've barely beaten some good teams too. Just a lot of close games overall for the Giants, and that's why the spread, like you mentioned, is a little scary here. But I still think the Giants are a significantly better football team at this point. Probably going to make the way the NFC is shaping up, potentially cruise into a playoff spot with some of the remaining games they have. So I'll go with the Giants here. They do have to play the Eagles, I think, twice, but I think they get right. Coming off this one after that Seattle game in their last time out there, I think they come back and probably put a punishment on Houston. But like you said, maybe a backdoor cover is in play here.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Colts at the Raiders. Boy, here's another game. Man, here's another game where it's just like, my goodness.
Here's a game.
Here's a game that's going to be played. The Colts at the Raiders. 6-point favorites. The Raiders in Vegas. My guess is the Raiders get up 17-0 here, and this game goes down to the wire and goes to overtime. I say that half jokingly. The Raiders cannot hold a lead for anything. Colts, though, new head coach. I mean, they've got a team that doesn't have a guy that's called plays before. I know this Raiders defense is bad. I get it, but
really bad.
It's just like, this is one of those things where it's like, yes, they're bad, but they're playing a team that I have zero faith in offensively. And even if Jonathan Taylor plays, I don't care. I still think I'm picking the Raiders in this one. I just don't think that changes a whole lot. Colts are clearly a team that are in transition after firing Frank Reich. Jeff Saturday stepping in. Again, they've got somebody calling plays who hasn't called plays before. Surely the Raiders have to win this game, right?
They should, but I'm picking them. Man,
but they may not.
Stuff, they may not. They are still been, like you said, they've blown 3 17-point leads. Yeah, it's been again, and they cut Jonathan Abram. We knew that this new regime, and I think it's going to take time. And I've tried to have a lot of friends that are Raider fans. And they talked to me about it. I'm like, this wasn't going to be pretty immediately, because the drafting under Mayock and Gruden was so brutal, and it wasn't always just that the players themselves were bad. It was just bad evaluation of the value and where they might fall in the draft. And some of these guys, you're just seeing all of them dropping off left and right. It's going to take time for them to get this roster where it needs to be, especially with some of the higher contracts they have. But besides that, we're talking about the Colts with Jeff Saturday. That was not something I expected to see, obviously. I don't think even Jeff Saturday expected to see. I believe the quote from Jim Irsay during this press conference was along the lines of, we felt lucky that he was available. And then Jeff Saturday later said something along the lines of, why are you considering me for this? Like, actually admitted that, which
great.
is just perfect. And now you're talking about
Optimism.
new play calling for an offense that is ranking last in DVOA against a Raider defense, which is like ranking last in DVOA. This is like the opposite of Chiefs offense facing the Cowboys defense at this point. It's that matchup on that side. I'm so curious to watch it because it could just go in any direction. I have no idea what to expect when they have the ball, but I think the Raiders offense is good enough. I am saying that after only 2 weeks after they got shut out in New Orleans, but they are at home. I think that I'm picking the Raiders just because at least they have stable coaching if they don't have a lot of stability with the overall roster. And I do think Indianapolis's defense is still pretty dang good. That's one thing they've got right this year that, again, maybe not to the lines of Denver where it felt like if they had a really top-end defense, they could be really good, and they haven't been. I thought that if the Colts would cruise their division title if you told me their defense is ranked 11th in DVOA at this point in this division. But here we are, and I think at this point the Raiders just have this much more trust in them than Indianapolis because, God, I have no idea what to expect. I think they even said Jeff Saturday went like 3-7 in his last high school football coaching season. Obviously, very different setup there. But man, it's crazy to come into the situation and immediately expect results. We'll find out though. Maybe he's the perfect man for the job.
Well, we'll see. From
it,
one
though.
game of struggling offenses to yet another game with a struggling offense. Cardinals at the Rams. This one's going to hit close to home for the Dillon here. The Rams are 3-point favorites in this game. Man, another game where I just like I expect this to be good, but like the Rams are just not. They don't give you a lot of confidence right now in what we could see here. I'm going to pick them, Dillon, but this is like I'm getting to the point with the Rams, which again, you and I talked before we started recording. To think that the Rams, Bucks, and Packers are where they are right now is just a truly incredible thing. I think they find a way to figure it out here to beat the Cardinals because they've kind of had the Cardinals number, and I've said, they've kind of had the Andre Hopkins number too in terms of being able to hold him down. But that confidence in the Rams just goes down and down by the week now.
Yeah, they didn't have to face him that first matchup this year, but yeah, he struggled last year. The Rams have, since Sean McVay's gotten there, only have lost one time to the Cardinals. It was like week 3 or 4 last year. Obviously a different Cardinals team at that point than this offense that's ranking 30th in DVOA. That is insane. Like with Kyler and the weapons they have, I knew we had questions about the offensive line, and obviously that takes a lot into account what they were before Hopkins came back and some of the good things he's been able to do, but they're still not a good team. It's 2 bad teams, and I think there's only one unit that's actually been solid on either team, and that's the Rams defense. They've been pretty dang good over the course of the year, ranking similarly to where they did last year, really. They're not the problem. It is the offense. The offensive line is really banged up, but it was already bad before that. It's gotten more banged up. It's just the fit with Allen Robinson has not worked anywhere close to where we thought it might going into the year. Van Jefferson coming back, they had a big drop in the game against the Bucks. Still acclimating him back in to help stretch the field a bit. I do think that Arizona, as you mentioned, I had the Cardinals at first, but I was like, man, they're bad too, and the Rams have had their number. So I flipped it to the Rams. I don't feel good about this game. It's not a game I'm looking forward to watching, to be honest, as a Rams fan. It's not going to be, even last week, I did not look forward to that Tampa game, and sure enough, it lived basically exactly up to what I expected for it to play out. I don't know if the Cardinals have that clutch gene that Tom Brady does, though, to make him pay at the end of the game. And I just think the Rams offense did enough against Arizona the first matchup. Could have even scored more. It's the one defense that's actually made them look pretty good. So maybe this is a game where the Rams put up some points finally. But what it actually means for anything, it's just these two teams really illustrate the downfall of this division in terms of being a dominant power. I mentioned it was the best division in the league for a couple of years there, along with maybe the AFC North, and now not even close because these two teams are just they've gone from teams you don't want to see in their schedule, especially when Kyler was hot, but obviously the Rams winning the Super Bowl last year, to now you look at them on their schedule like, oh man, we can easily cause all sorts of problems for that offense. Even if we just don't turn the ball over against their defense, we'll probably win. That's the formula right now.
Yeah. Well, hey, look, another struggling offense coming up next. The Cowboys, not them, 5-point favorites on the road at the Packers, who, like we just said, grouping them in together with the Bucks and the Rams. in terms of where they're at right now. It's one of those games you really think about. And you're like, man, this has got to be it for the Packers, right? Like they finally turned it around. I would have said that, Dylan, had they not lost to the Lions last week and not been able to put up points against that defense. And now you're telling me I'm supposed to be confident they're going to put up points against this Cowboys defense? I don't think so. I'm picking the Cowboys here. Romeo Dobbs is out. I don't know what Aaron Jones. I'm not sure. I haven't seen. I know he had an injury. I don't know what the status is necessarily. Sure. But either way, right? Like I don't. I have. If we can only take what we've seen to this point, there is very little to make me believe that the Packers offense is going to be able to do what they can. They can put up points against this Cowboys defense. Cowboys defense has been so good, and I don't care where this game's played out. You can play this game on Pluto, and it's like I'm still giving the edge to the Cowboys defense here. So I'm gonna 5 points. That's one that may, again, I think you probably expect this to be like a 1-2 point spread maybe in favor of either team. Probably if we'd have said this 2 months ago, but now I'm not that stunned by the Cowboys being this, and I wouldn't even be surprised if this went up a little bit because I just think the Cowboys are probably the better pick here.
Yeah, I think Dallas is just a significantly better team. I think they're the right there with the nine. I know maybe the Niners aren't, in my mind, still right in the level of Philly and Dallas, but maybe those are Minnesota and kind of a tier below. But maybe those are the top 3 teams. I think Dallas is right there because their defense is one of the biggest stories of the year. Again, was keeping Dan Quinn. A lot of teams looked at him and just ended up staying in Dallas. And this defense has just gotten better from last year. They were great last year. They've gotten better, which is not something I necessarily expected to happen. But their defensive line is mauling people. Micah Parsons. Probably at this point, it's tough to say without some of the help that Aaron Donald had on the defensive line. But right now, given his age, especially, probably the number one defender you'd want on your football team. He's been just insane. And the thing with Dallas's offense, they've gotten better. They've trended up. They're still not perfect passing the ball, but they've run the ball pretty well. We've chronicled the issues on the ground with the run defense for the Packers. They're second worst as I look now, worse than I thought initially. Man. It's just not a good matchup. I know the game's in Green Bay, but Dallas is just a better football team. And I just don't see the Packers having the avenues to take advantage of this. This isn't the team like Detroit where you feel like, all right, they can get it back in the win column here. They run the ball and not turn it over, and they end up doing those things. And Dallas is a team that forces a ton of turnovers. Man, it's just not, like you said, I still don't know what the 5 point spread feels like. Green Bay can maybe keep it close if their defense has a better performance. But again, I just see if Dallas sticks to the run game, if they get an early lead especially, Green Bay wants to win this game, they're going to have to jump out quick because this is not a team you want to try to come back against with how that defense is constructed. So yeah, I'm picking the Cowboys. And real quick, on our last pick, I don't know if you want to change it. I'm going to keep the Rams, but I got a notification literally as you started talking about the Cowboys-Packer game that Stafford is in concussion protocol. And he's supposed to be cleared before Sunday. So it is Wednesday as we're recording, Wednesday afternoon. So it's a chance. But
all right,
man,
we'll use the caveat. If Stafford doesn't play, I'm picking the Cardinals. If he does play, I'm picking the Rams. I mean, that's pretty simple enough,
perfect.
Right? Like that's.
I'll stick with the Rams
easy.
just for the heck of it. But
let's stick with that for now. But if he doesn't play, who's in there? It's going to be
John Wolford.
That's it. Wolford's still there.
He has a W against the Cardinals that won the division in 20 or not won the division.
True.
Clinched the playoff spot in 2020.
Yeah, well, if Stafford doesn't play, I'm picking the Cardinals. Sorry to Mr. John Wolford, but I'm still going to pick the Rams if he does play. But if he doesn't, I'll go Cardinals. All right, this next game, I think this is a pretty straightforward. Biggest spread on the board. Last one of the group, Commanders at the Eagles. Eagles, 11-point favorites in Philly. This is a no-brainer to me. Honestly, I should have even considered this as a betting lock. The Eagles is 11-point favorites. I just think that they're that good. And what was it, Dylan? These two teams played. When was it? I got to look this up real quick. Not long ago. Yeah, we're starting to get into some of those games where teams just played recently.
A little while ago, actually.
Was it? What was the score? Why can't I find
24-8.
24-8. Okay. Well, yeah, I think this one is simply just a simple pick for the Eagles here.
Yeah, I'm picking the Eagles too. The spread only scares me because of what we just saw in that game against Houston. What we've just overall, the Eagles get these big leads and they kind of cruise in the second half. So I could see that happening again. Washington's looked better than they did early in the season with Heineke in there. They easily could have won that game against the Vikings. Special teams have been good. Their defense isn't bad. It's middle of the pack, but their offense is still overall a problem. And I just, against Philly's defense, I don't see a crack that they're going to be able to utilize. Maybe for fantasy owners of Washington running backs, maybe it's a little bit of a promising thing that Philly's run defense is still not been great. It's 27th in that avenue. They're second in pass defense. So another game where if Washington wants to have a chance, they're going to have to get a lead. I just don't see it happening. I know that I mentioned that the defense for Washington hasn't been bad. Maybe for some of the running times where we've seen Philadelphia run the ball a ton. I don't know if Washington's the defense you're going to be able to do that against, but you can definitely pass on them. And we've seen this year, Philadelphia, unlike last year, where it was just like it was great coaching by Sirianni and that staff. You realized they weren't going to be able to throw the ball. They realized they had to change their whole offense with Jalen Hurts, and they did, and they became really good in the second half of the year. This year, as everyone knows, Jalen Hurts is up there with some of the best quarterbacks in the league, some of the best fantasy quarterbacks in the league, and they are just so balanced. And they can, depending on their opponent's weaknesses, they can really form their game plan around that. I think that's what happens here. Maybe you'll get a little love for some of the not just AJ Brown, and I know Dallas Goedert just had a big game. Maybe if Devontae Smith will go off in this one too. Yeah. But I think Philly's just a significantly better team. They're the pick. Just the spread was a little too high for me to pick that one. But yeah, I'll go with the Eagles to win.
No, there you go. There are picks for what looks like a thrilling Week 10 in the NFL. We know how this works. We say this in some of these slates. We're like, oh, it's going to be brutal with some of these matchups, but we know how it works. Like, you watch the red zone, there'll be good stuff. Like, Panthers and Falcons will probably play another wild game. Like, those kind of things, that's just what you expect now. So, should be a lot of fun. So, Dylan, let everybody know where they can find everything at Clutch Points to get them ready for Week 10 in the NFL.
Yeah, you can follow all of the games in the Clutch Points app. You can go to we have a new site design. Still some things being worked out, but if you go to ClutchPoints.com to the NFL section, there at the top, still all the NFL stuff will be there. Our older pages with more fantasy stats, if you go to ClutchPoints.com/sports/NFL, you can still find those things right now. Lots of stuff coming out, lots of predictions. We'll have all our, not just looking at the X's and O matchups, but also betting predictions. All this will be coming out. If you go to the betting section at the top of ClutchPoints.com or the NFL section, you can find all that good stuff. And yeah, it should be another fun week. No more MLB, obviously, but you can follow NBA games in the Clutch Points app. Try to get some things going for when we get to the college football playoff and stuff like that in there too. So lots of good stuff going on at Clutch Points.
Yep, check it out there. As always, be sure to subscribe to the podcast. Any podcast app you use, search for Establish the Pass. And thanks as always for listening to the podcast, and we'll talk to you next time here on the Establish the Pass podcast.